Hello everyone, thanks for joining us on this latest GINX.tv video. I'm joined by Chad. Chad, say hello.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Chad has had some time to get hands-on with Dead Island 2. Very long overdue follow-up to 2011's first Dead Island game. Chad, tell us what you thought. Like, you've had time to kind of play the game. What was your first impressions?
So I think overall I was really impressed with the sort of hands-on experience that I had. The graphics and the combat mechanics were just absolutely incredible, incredibly detailed, especially with the ability to sort of like sidestep and kick back zombies. They're also like really cool gruesome mechanics, like the ability to completely like rip off a zombie's head or smash its brains in, which is really cool. And on that note, I think that the game's unique combat system really adds like a lot of flavor to the sort of gruesome attacks that you can do. So just as an example, you can literally like hack off layers of skin and tissue. It's that detailed.
Right. Okay.
It's enough to make your
really
skin crawl.
Properly dismember.
Yeah,
You
literally.
can really go to town.
And I mean, I don't think that there's anything quite like it in the gaming industry. Yeah, I mean,
I was going to say, is that the flesh system? I think I've vaguely remembered them calling it that, but apologies if I'm incorrect.
yes, no, that's exactly right. It's called Flesh, which is very appropriate, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But yeah, beyond that, I think the weapons in the game are also quite a standout feature. So for example, like if you're using weapons, the weapons eventually break and you'll have to find something else to use. They can be
That'll annoy
repaired.
someone.
Yeah, I mean, they can be repaired later on, and there's plenty of weapons to be found around the sort of Hull A setting. But beyond that, I think the real standout feature was the customizations that you could do to the weapons. So for example, you could add like an electrocutor mod to deal shock damage and electrocute zombies as you attack them. I think you can also add like fire and then some other bloody attack or whatever.
Okay. So
Yeah.
It's not just like you got a shotgun, you got a pistol, you got a machine gun. There's a bit more layers to it than that then.
Definitely, and I think I mean, there are guns. I never had a chance to actually use any of them in the preview, but I think the real sort of like the real aspect of the combat system that really shines is the melee combat. Like, there's nothing quite like it. I mean, you can also interact with the environment. So, for example, you can like explode oil tankers, or you can like leak tanks of caustic substance to melt zombies and stuff. And I mean, all of this obviously adds to the immersive experience. But beyond that, I think the melee combat system is it's unprecedented. Haven't really seen anything like this in a previous title.
So it sounds like they've gone to town quite a bit on giving you as many different ways to dismember all the zombies as much as possible. It's not just a standard shoot them in the head and then they drop. There's a bit more to it then.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment.
In terms of like you spoke about there, like how good it looks in terms of the flesh systems, what's the kind of surrounding environment like? Does that like look pretty good? Like, how does when you've been playing it, were there any kind of technical limitations? How did it all play out?
So, I mean, the graphics in Dead Island 2 was absolutely impressive and stunning, and like, as I said, the flesh system in particular added a certain degree of realism that was both stunning and gruesome at the same time. That said, I did notice some technical limitations during certain sections of the game. So, for example, like if there were a lot of zombies around, I had some like tearing and stuttering. But I think the game is still visually pleasing overall, and these sort of visual stutters were probably an issue on my side with my laptop. I have a laptop, so maybe it like, I don't know, overheated or whatever. Other than that, I mean, if there were any performance issues, it's likely something that Dambuster Studios will probably iron out ahead of launch. But
I mean, it looks really. I mean, this is me speaking personally from what I've seen. Like, I think I really like the environment that it's set in. That it's not like with Dying Light, where it's the apocalypse 10 years down the road, where there's vegetation everywhere. It's kind of like
it's super
it
modern.
Almost feels you're like a month or two into the apocalypse kind of thing.
That's precisely it.
Still it's like an element of polish to the world still, which I quite like.
Absolutely, and I think it's quite a healthy sort of detraction from the sort of traditional island setting in the previous games. I mean, you get to explore the quote-unquote streets of Hell A, which is essentially Los Angeles. I had a chance to explore around like sort of Beverly Hills and then the Bel Air area, but I think that players can also get to see like Venice Beach and I think San Francisco. So
is it kind of like open world, but to the extent that there's very clearly a path they want you to be kind of following, as opposed to just go anywhere, do anything? It's not like Fallout levels of open worldness, I imagine.
yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. So I mean, it's sort of I would call it quasi open world, so to say. I mean, you can explore, and there is obviously places that you can go and and such. But I think there is still a sort of defined storyline that kind of like nudges you in the right direction, so to say.
I imagine then that's kind of like you can follow the kind of main path and you'll get your storyline that they want to tell, but I imagine the more you go off the beaten track, the more kind of side missions you're going to find, the more like people you're going to find like hidden in little like houses that you might otherwise miss, and that kind of stuff. Like that's where I imagine the kind of post game stuff
that's
kind of hidden.
Yes, that's 100% right. And I think, so I mean, it's true that there is a sort of clear path that players have to follow, but if you're venturing out in the area and so forth, like you can find side quests and stuff that you'll obviously have to like deal with, and there might be reward incentives for doing that. I mean, beyond the clear path that you have to follow, I think that the game still offers quite a lot of opportunities for exploration and discovery. So, as I mentioned, the sort of city setting is a welcome change from the previous island of Benoi. I think it's Benoi that players saw in the previous iterations of the game. And I think
we'll forgive you if you haven't got it right. It's been like 10 years since that game came out. So.
I'm pretty sure it's Benoi, but you know, whatever. But I think overall, I mean, some players might find the sort of like quasi open world design a little off-putting, but then there might be other players that kind of like it. You know, I didn't really have a problem with that at all. There was enough variety to sort of maintain interest.
In terms of that storyline that you did get to experience, like what did that resonate with you? Like, was it interesting? Like, the one worry that I do have with Dead Island 2 is that I think it looks great. I reckon it'll probably be a lot of fun. I do worry that it's kind of just another competent but like maybe another sort of zombie smashing game, and there isn't kind of like a level of heart to the main storyline. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you felt playing it, or did you actually want to kind of continue with that main storyline that they're trying to get you to follow?
I don't think so. I think that, I mean, so to avoid spoiling too much of the storyline, I'll just say that the game is extremely engaging and immersive. So you'll sort of start trying to escape this zombie-infested city of Halle, and you'll encounter sort of like various characters along the way. The main plot seems to be around you sort of navigating your player's unique immunity to this contagion and to find a way out of the city. So I think that in itself is fairly generic, but I think that, you know, considering everything else that I've mentioned, particularly around the combat system, and I think with the weapon customizations, it adds a certain twist to the game that isn't necessarily common, I'd say, to the sort of zombie hack and slash gaming market.
It kind of gives me Far Cry vibes in that I'm not really playing Far Cry for the storyline, but I know I'm really going to enjoy my time with it.
Yeah, I could put it like that. I mean, in what other game were you going to have the ability to sort of like literally hack through enemies and like hack through like skin, tissue, and bone?
With your electrified pistol thing, chainsaw, gun.
I'll put it simply, like there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of bones, and there's a lot of cartridges in the game. Like it's a lot, and I mean it's a zombie game, fair enough, but it's far from your sort of run-of-the-mill, unoriginal zombie smashing game. I'll just put it that way.
The one thing I did spot, like watching through some of the B-roll, and maybe this was something I completely missed previously, maybe I wasn't paying attention, it kind of looks like when it comes to sort of tailoring your approach to the game or building up your character, there's like this kind of card deck skill mechanic. Like it's not like another skill tree, thank God, because I think I'm kind of done with skill trees for a while. Can you kind of speak to that? Like I'm guessing you've got like quite a good sort of bit of hands-on to kind of get used to like this sort of card mechanic feature they're using.
Yeah, I mean that's 100% right. I actually found it quite a lot of fun to use, to be honest. It's a departure from the sort of traditional skill tree system, and I think that it offers a lot of customization options for each playable character. They call it slayers. There's like 6 of them. So instead of just unlocking skills in a linear sort of fashion, you can actually choose and equip different skill cards to create your sort of unique playables. So I quite like the flexibility that this offered, as it allowed me to sort of like experiment with the different combinations of skills and create a playstyle, or create a build rather, that resonated with my own playstyle. I think it also offers a certain degree of replayability. So one of the cool things about the skill cards is that you can pretty much respec your character at any time that you want. Like you can go into the system and then swap out one card for another. And I think that's really cool in a sense, because you can just sort of tailor the build for specific circumstances as well. So yeah, overall I thought the card deck system was pretty cool, and I think it can be quite engaging as well.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of, I can't remember what they're called, so apologies for anyone that loves Bethesda games, but like the system they use in Fallout, where you can basically tailor your skills, and there's kind of very specific ones that you can kind of, it sounds like a bit more of an RPG mechanic than I would expect from a Dead Island game.
Yeah, it could be. I think I mean, put it this way, I think that players will be able to try out the different builds for themselves, and I think it might open up a sort of opportunity for people to create their own builds and to kind of really explore zombie smashing in a more unique and customized way. Put it that way, and I think that's.
So I guess from what you're saying, not everyone's going to have the same experience, because depending on which cards that you pick for your particular player, you could experience one section of the game completely different to someone else, presumably.
Precisely, and there are specific cards that are unique to specific slayers. So, for example, if you're playing Amy, you might have 2 cards that you won't be able to play with on another character. And on top of that, then you can customize it further with various skill cards that you'll find by exploring the game map or just killing zombies. So depending on obviously like how you play and how you progress in the game, it's going to give you a completely unique and tailored experience that another player might not have.
So the replayability, it's not so much that you start the game again and play it a different way. It's more that you might start it again and then completely use different cards and perks to approach your player
exactly
separately on a second playthrough.
That's exactly it. So I mean, I actually only had enough time to sort of play through once with Amy, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what else the other Slayers have to offer. And I think that other players who obviously hop on Dead Island 2 after launch are going to have exactly the same sort of experience as well.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks, Chad, for jumping on and telling us a little bit about the game and your preview. For anyone that doesn't know, Dead Island 2 is out this April, on April 21st. And if you want to read more of what sort of Chad got to experience in his hands-on, head over to GINX.tv. In the meantime, like and subscribe, hit the bell button, and thanks for joining me, Chad.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.